With me today is Mahar Mangahas, a preeminent well-being researcher. Mahar, can you tell me your current title and institution affiliation?
Well, I'm the president of Social Weather Stations. That's a non-profit survey research institute. We do at least quarterly national surveys, and we do many others on contract. We're 28 years old as an institute, and in that time we have done 400 to 500 surveys, of which half have been national in scope.
Amazing. And your country is the Philippines, your home country?
Yes.
Very interesting. Well, can you tell me what do you see as your main contributions to the field of well-being?
Well, our main contributions are actually in bringing new data into play. Our data on self-rated poverty and hunger, for example, quarterly for a decade or two are completely new. They're innovations. I believe they're the fastest survey-based measures of economic deprivation in the world.
Amazing.
I think so. And I'm not trying to compare.
Yes.
But my view is that every country should do its own tracking over time without having to worry about comparisons with other countries, because that way you'll learn about yourselves and let the others do their own thing. Now, I believe in the use of a lot of subjective estimation because it's very practical. That's the long and short of it. It's very practical. You use only a few survey questions. You don't use a whole survey questionnaire in order to do it. In fact, that's how it works. We only use a part of our questionnaire, which is an omnibus, survey omnibus, and many other portions are available for sponsorship, and that's how the thing gets funded.
Very good. Can you give us an example of a subjective question that you might ask?
Well, our self-rated poverty goes like this. We show a card which has two words, poor and not poor, and there's a line drawn in between. And we just ask the head of the household, please point to where on this card your family is. And
Very
then,
good. Many pain measures are operated that way.
We'll get three answers, the poor, the not poor, and some will say borderlines. We'll get three answers. When we report the ones who say that they are poor. That's a starting question. A follow-up question is, if they are poor, say, well, we ask, how much for a home budget would you need in pesos per month in order not to feel that way? So that becomes our self-rated poverty threshold.
Very
and
good.
That's an indicator in itself.
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
We also ask them if they feel their food is poor or not poor under the same context, the same card, and that gives us a food poverty indicator.
Very good.
We also ask them if they have experienced hunger in the last 3 months, at least once. And if they said yes, then we ask them, well, was it only once, a few times, often, or always? So that gives us a 4-point scale. And those who say often or always, we call them severely hungry. And if they say once or a few times, we say they're moderately hungry. Right, so we report this every 3 months, and you can look at our website and see that the quarterly reports are there, which go to the media.
Ah, very good. Can you tell me some lessons that you've learned about the Philippines over this 28 years of survey work?
Yeah. Well, for example, we've learned that if you track poverty and hunger quarterly, that you get a lot of volatility, which you couldn't expect if you were doing it only once every 3 years, which is the official tracking frequency.
I see.
Right? You learn for example, the gross domestic product has hardly any effect on poverty or hunger. Right?
Interesting.
What matters more are rates of inflation, especially of food prices, and those can have very immediate impact on hunger and poverty. Well, which sounds sort of might say natural, but yet the orthodox measures of how well the country is doing is always in terms of per capita gross domestic product, right? But that will take many, many years, you see. And if from quarter to quarter there's very little attention being paid to wages and cost of living, and what it's doing to ordinary people, I think that this talk of quote inclusive growth, it's not going to get down to realistic policies to make sure that the growth is shared by everybody.
So tell me, I was going to ask you about the practical implications of this work. So, how do you see? What are some ways that the wealth could reach the very poor, for example?
Well, we're not really in a position to do, you might say, policy development.
I see.
That requires a whole faculty. I would say if I were a university, then I'd have to have a whole faculty of people looking at many, many things happening at the same time, other policies, and so forth. Right? What we're doing is we're bringing the issue to the public attention.
Yes.
If it weren't for what we were doing, you'd have this once every 3 years situation, which was okay for a while because they seem to show every 3 years a gradual decline and gentle improvement in the situation. But those improvements stopped approximately in the year 2000. Even the official data show that now, that it's been flat ever since. But we knew that much earlier because we were tracking quarterly.
Very good.
Right. So we were always in advance of the official data. So this is our mission. You see? Our mission is first of all to get the situation out and recognized. Right. Then secondly, what that does is that it inspires people to do something about the situation.
Yes.
And then thirdly, then those with the analytical tools can kind of work out what happened.
Yes.
See, I'm in favor of time series analysis. Right. That's how I got into this in the first place. I studied econometrics. That's my major.
Very good.
For my PhD. But then I found out that, gosh, you don't have any time series data on poverty. And that becomes really a function of the statistical establishment.
Yes.
All right. So.
Well, that's a great.
We're now in a situation where we're competing with the statistical establishment. In fact, I'll send you a paper which I gave a few weeks ago called "The Value of Statistical Competition." I gave this at the National Convention of Statistics in the Philippines, which is kind of explaining what we're up to. No?
Yes, yes.
Okay? We get on the nerves of the statistical establishment a lot. Right? They say every 3 months they have to bear the cross of explaining why their unemployment is different from our unemployment. Right? And what can we do? We say we're more realistic.
Yes. Well, it sounds like it's a great contribution, and you are you're gigging the establishment a little bit, pushing them in ways that could be very good for the poor.
Yeah, we're statistical advocates.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a great contribution. Are there any other practical implications of this work besides the idea of surveying quarterly? Any other practical implications?
Well, actually, we look at well-being in the round, and for us, a very important part of well-being is good governance. Because of what we're doing, we have the public opinion. These are public opinion polls. Subjective well-being is all general collective opinion. So we get the ratings of the president, the high officials, the government. Everything. We have the counterparts of the Gallup views of what people feel about their Congress, their government, and so forth. All right, and we see this all the time, and of course we predict elections. Now, that's very important. We have to get involved in elections, and we have to we have to do well. We have to predict correctly who's going to win and who's going to lose, and that's the main basis for our credibility. See, that's why people have to listen, because they say, look, they're going to get it right when it's election time, so you have to listen to them this time.
So you must have built up a lot of credibility over these 28 years.
Yeah, also a lot of political enemies who don't like what we're doing.
I'm sure you have many enemies.
Yeah, we have every 3 years is election time, and every 3 years we have 1 or 2 lawsuits.
Wow. Well, that's amazing for a social scientist, economist to have to deal with. But how do you deal with that when it comes up?
We have our own lawyer. We fight it out like that. We haven't lost.
I see.
Yeah, they've tried. They've tried to put up a law preventing publication of election surveys in particular, and we've won in the Supreme Court. Now this is a case of freedom of speech, and so we have jurisprudence now that states that opinion polling, election surveys in particular, are protected, are included, are a category of freedom of speech, and deserve to be protected.
Well, it sounds like some wonderful work. Let me ask you this. What do you think is needed to keep the field of well-being vibrant and growing? What do we need to sustain this movement and academic discipline?
Well, you need a lot of data. You need data to keep coming out at all levels, not necessarily national, local, and so forth. The reason why people look at the stock exchange so much and say, hey, that's good, it's because it comes out every day. And of course you can make money or lose money depending on that. So frequency is the most important component of well-being indicators. Frequency.
Very good. And do you have any advice for young people interested in this field as a career choice?
Well, they have to start learning a little bit more about data analysis. You see, so many, I believe, just never got around to doing survey analysis, didn't get trained in it. And faculty members, are, I think, afraid to assign these topics to their students because they'll be shown up for their inadequacy in terms of statistical competence, analytical competence, and so forth. It's a lot of fun to gather new data all the time. You see, and we're in many areas here. All the public opinion issues we have to deal with in our polls, including security issues. Including all the controversies that come into play, and we're kind of expected to come up and figure out what the people think. Oh, family planning, for example. The Philippines is very late in fostering family planning, and
is that because it's a Catholic country?
Because it's the strong Catholic hierarchy. All right, the people want it. All right, that's what we've shown. The people want it.
Yes.
All right, but the hierarchy doesn't. Okay, so it's been a struggle, and the advocates, of course, keep on getting us to poll about it. They say, you already know the answer, just poll again. They say, poll again, and of course, it helps their cause. When we show, constantly that people want family planning to be taught in the schools, in the public schools, you see, right? And of course the ones who are beholden to the hierarchy, are all against it. So we have to deal with that kind of a thing. We have to be completely non-sectarian, right? We have to be completely partisan, politically speaking. That's we have to walk this line.
Yes.
All the time, and that's the way it goes. People want to know for whom am I going to vote. I say, of course I don't. My vote doesn't matter. Why should I tell you?
Yes,
right?
yes. Well, it seems like a wonderful thing you're doing for your country, where you're holding up a mirror and telling people this is what's going on. This is what people think.
Yeah.
And I applaud you for your work, and thank you for coming today.
You're welcome.